I just got a phone call yesterday from a dear family that was completely thrown off guard because their child, who was doing just fine, is all of a sudden for the last 10 days waking up with nightmares every single night. And she said to me, I don't understand because there's nothing really scary going on. And he's not really watching TV. It's not like there's a scary show or a scary event that happened. There's really nothing that she could pinpoint as the trigger or the culprit to why her child is having nightmares. And so I told her, you know what, this is a wonderful opportunity for us to discuss a little bit more than nightmares, but rather what is it that triggers the nightmares, what we can do as parents to help facilitate our children and to prevent these nightmares from happening, but also to be able to then, once they're happening, know where we want to put our focus so that we can help our children move out of that space back into full night's sleep. My name is Dorit Shoshani, and a lot of what I teach in Quiet Nights is more than just sleep tactics. It's more than just what we need to do to get our child to sleep. It's really meeting our children with understanding, meeting ourselves with understanding, and recognizing how we as the parent can be in the role of the facilitator and the parent in the lead so that our children have who to lean on and can feel safe. In discussing nightmares, let's first talk about what that looks like. So your child is waking up probably closer to 2, 3, 4 in the morning, maybe 5 in the morning, screaming, crying, very afraid. You come to their side in a panic because you absolutely think something horrible is happening, as we all do. But then you find your child with their heart racing, maybe they got sweaty palms, and they are begging you not to leave their side. They're telling you, please sit here. I'm coming with you to your bed. I'm not doing this alone. I'm really, really afraid. And they are coherent, and they are, if they're able to speak, they will be speaking to you and they will be voicing to you what is actually happening for them. And they will show you that they are afraid. So they will have demands telling you, sit here, don't leave, I'm scared, and anything of that sort. So you want to pay attention to the way that your child is waking up and the time that your child is waking up, because nightmares tend to happen when our children are going through REM sleep. And REM sleep is the terminology used for dreaming. So as the night progresses, REM sleep becomes more prominent. So you can just imagine we have a typical night. The night starts maybe between 6 and 7:30, and it stretches all the way until about 6 or 7:30 in the morning. And for the beginning of the night, everything is pretty quiet and everything is pretty smooth. Our child also fell asleep with no problem. And even during the day, like, they're not afraid to go to sleep. They're not telling you they're afraid to be in their bed. It's not like they're asking you to sit by their side when they fall asleep initially. Meaning, in your mind, you're thinking, everything is all right. We're doing just fine here. And also, my kid is emotionally doing just fine during the day. He seems okay. But then, in the middle of the second half of the night, so probably anywhere between 2:30 and 5:30 in the morning, your child wakes up in a panic, is definitely thrown off guard. You can see the fear. So they're expressing that they are afraid, and they are responding to you when you show up by their bedside. And that is where we can recognize that this is what is classic nightmare, meaning my child is aware. My child is speaking or voicing to me their fear, even if they don't have language quite in the sense that, like, they can speak exactly what's happening or they can tell you exactly what the dream was about. They definitely can relay to you that they are afraid. And they relay to you that they want you to stay there by their side and be there with them as they are going through this panic. I'd like to talk about the triggers. What triggers a nightmare? Because we're all dumbfounded around this question. It's like we think about maybe a scary TV show. We think about a scary situation that came up, or, we try and connect it. Like, scary means scary, but really that's not the only reason, and it's also not the main reason. So here I would like to talk about separation. And separation, when we say the word separation, we think about proximity. So I am separate from my child when I drop them off in daycare, and that's true. And we say that a lot of separation creates a lot of needing to cope, which is also true. And the more a child needs to cope, the more taxing that is on their system. And we can definitely understand that. I mean, that definitely makes sense. But there is more about separation that maybe is not so obvious. So whenever our child experiences a separation from something that is familiar and dear to them, that creates the need to cope. So let's give some examples here. Let's say that my child is going to daycare, and that's been going on for a while, and he never had nightmares up until now. But the last 10 days, the daycare teacher was ill. And although the rest of the staff is still the same staff, his daycare teacher, which is like, the person who he was most connected to, the one who's really holding the class together, the one who runs the show, is all of a sudden not there. And there's a new person in charge. And so that automatically is considered a separation because the child is separate from the familiar teacher in the lead that he is used to being in connection with. That alone is separation. Okay, so that means that now for 10 days, my child is going to daycare and he is over coping, meaning he's coping more than he would normally need to cope because of the situation of the daycare teacher that is no longer showing up every morning. It's somebody else. In addition to that, maybe at the same time, he's being potty trained. And so potty training, nobody would think of that as a separation, but actually separating from my familiar. So separating from, I'm just familiar in wearing diapers. I'm familiar in that whole kind of way I go about going to the bathroom. And now it's new. And now I need to remember to go to the toilet. And now sometimes I have an accident. And now, I'm wearing undies. And there's all kinds of new experiences that I am coping with. Not good or bad. Remember, separation is not about being good or bad or being right and wrong. It's natural and it's part of our lives as humans on this Earth planet or planet Earth. And we experience separation whenever we are going through some new territory, some territory that feels unfamiliar, some territory that demands coping and coping more than usual. So let's go back to the example of this child. So this child is now in a daycare setting with an unfamiliar teacher for 10 days. And on top of that, he's being potty trained, which is already very demanding and probably a little bit stressful for him, even if he's doing just fine. And in addition to that, we just got rid of his pacifier because he's now 3.5 years old. And so it's time. I mean, the potty training feels very age appropriate and the pacifier, getting rid of it, feels very age appropriate. And actually he agreed. He was saying, like when we brought it up to him that we're going to take away the pacifier and he's going to be a big boy now and he's not going to have it anymore. He agreed to that. And he went with the parents and took the pacifiers and put them all in a plastic bag and they gave them away. And that was the end of the pacifier. And it seemed fine. It was like, well, he agreed and he was fine with that. But it's still separation because this comfort object that he was used to having is no longer there. And so he's coping with not having the pacifier and he's coping with now all of a sudden needing to cope with the potty training. And he's also coping with the new daycare teacher or the substitute daycare teacher that has taken the place of someone who was warm and loving and familiar. And so he himself is going through a lot of separation. So all of those moments of separation create a sense of needing to cope and challenge. And that, although the child may be highly capable and the child is amazing and he's doing great with his potty training and he's wonderful with his pacifier being, a thing of the past and he's okay with the new daycare teacher, he's actually doing all right, that doesn't mean that he's not being taxed and that the body is not coping in a way that maybe we don't notice during the day. So like I like to say, the body never lies. And if the body never lies, then what is the body telling us in the middle of the night when he's waking up with these nightmares? And nightmares are a sign of too much separation. Or I should say, can be a sign of too much separation. So of course, if you're going to watch a very scary movie, you can definitely dream about that at nighttime and you can connect the dots and be like, oh, right, I just watched that and then I dreamt about that. And so that creates the connection. But many times with our little ones, we have situations of nightmares that come up all of a sudden. That's how it feels for us. It's all of a sudden he's going through a period of nightmares. And we tend to look for that scary movie or that scary situation that the child is going through, or that the child is connecting to what's happening at night, and we can't find it. But really, when we look at separation and try and recognize where our child is experiencing separation again and again and again during the day, it makes it very obvious why a child is having a nightmare in the middle of the night. So just to kind of recap what we can consider separation, we can talk about separation, we said, with the pacifier that all of a sudden we decided to give up, or with the potty training that is now new, or with a daycare teacher who has now taken a leave of absence or is not well for a while. It can also be a new sibling that is born into the family. And so the time and the connection that I had with mom and dad is no longer the same. And so there's a little bit of a separation. It could be that we've moved homes. And so while that's so wonderful and super exciting, that is taxing for a child, because all of a sudden my familiar space is no longer familiar. And the fact that I could just like navigate through the house almost with my eyes closed is now like, wait, which room am I in? And where's everything again? And I don't remember exactly, or my home just doesn't feel familiar yet. So anytime we have separation, we want to pay attention. And that doesn't mean we're not going to move homes. And that does not mean that our child is not going to be potty trained, or that we're not going to have other children in the house, or that our child is going to be married with a pacifier. It just means that we are aware. It just means that we know what to look at, because in parenting, we want to be skillful. And it doesn't mean we know it all. It just means that we want to understand our children so that we can meet them with understanding. And when we meet our child with understanding, we feel like we know what we want to do in order to help facilitate the situation for them. So what can we do? Right? Because now we have a situation. It's like, well, we are moving houses, and we just came back from America on a trip, and we are potty training, and in a month we're going to have another baby. So what do? I can't just stop my life now, because there's going to be a lot of separation. But the antidote to separation is, I'll give you a few seconds, connection, right? So connection is what we want to put our focus on when our child is going through a lot of separation. So with this family that I was talking to you about, with this little boy who was going through this difficult period of time, and they had a new baby, and he had a new daycare teacher, and he was, I think, also didn't have his pacifier, if I remember correctly, meaning there were a lot of factors in the mix. The parents were amazing. It's such a wonderful family, such a warm, loving family. They created a longer, more connecting bedtime routine. And instead of just, let's say, mom putting him to sleep or dad putting him to sleep, they decided that they were both going to be doing bedtime routine with him, reading stories with him together on their bed. And so while, yes, there's a new baby in the house, together, they were all together in the bedroom, and they added 1 or 2 stories, and they just made it such a wonderful, yummy connection time before the child was going to be going off to sleep. So intuitively, they recognized that he needs more connection, which was fabulous. That was super skillful. And while that alone didn't shift the situation, it did make it less. So already she told me over the phone, she said, look, we're already doing this amazing bedtime routine with him. We can see that it's helping a little bit, but not quite nipping it in the bud. What else should we be doing? And we talked about the separation. And she said, I didn't know that, but it definitely makes sense. And now I kind of feel like I know where to put my focus. So she's not going to quit her day job, and she's not going to give up the new baby, and she's not going to not send him to daycare anymore. But what she can be is become more intentional. And if you're listening to me regularly, you know that intention is a big part of how we want to show up as parents. And so being able to be more intentional with him during the times they're together could be very powerful without having to add more time together. So it's not like, now I'm not going to work and you're not going to go to daycare and we're going to spend all day together every single day so that you never experience separation, because that's not the way we want to go about it. And it's not that in the middle of the night she all of a sudden decided, all right, fine, you don't have to sleep by yourself because you're so scared, so let's just sleep together because he needs more connection, which, by the way, I hear that a lot, that because a child needs more connection, because parents are working, and because, the day just gets very hectic and we don't have so much time together, parents tend to want to be connected during what's called disconnect, which is sleep. And being together during a disconnect is not where we want to put our focus, because sleep is so restorative when it's healthy. And we want to be able to wake up feeling fully rested, ourselves and our child included. But we do want to put emphasis on creating more intentional connection when we are together. And thankfully, we are together during the day hours. So what we can do is we recognize that we are having breakfast together anyways. And so while we're having breakfast, we're just going to have breakfast with intention. And that means I'm going to sit down with you, and maybe I'm even going to say it to you. Maybe I'm even going to say, we're going to have a breakfast date this morning, and we're going to have coffee together, or we're going to have whatever it is together. Or you know what? On our way to daycare today, we're not taking the car. We're actually going to walk, and we're going to smell the flowers, and we're going to talk about what we see along the way. And just that creates connection. Just that fosters a deeper sense of connection for the child, which then will ease the coping that needs to happen around all those moments of separation. So recognize that we have a lot of influence if we know what we're looking at. If we don't know what we're looking at, we're shooting in the dark. And we've all been there. I've been there too. I used to shoot in the dark in the beginning a lot around my girls because I was a young mom and I didn't know any different. And so I tried this and I tried this and I tried this. But when things are not landing, it just means maybe it's time for some help. Maybe it's time to seek some outside advice or guidance so that we can be more precise and so that the trial and error doesn't come at the expense of our children, but rather we had a phone call with someone, we got some insight, and now we understand where to put our focus. So putting focus on connection when a child is going through a lot of separation helps allow the child's body and nervous system to be able to cope on an emotional level. It's like I'm more emotionally satiated because I experience more connection with my parents. And so it's easier for me to have a buffer or a cushion around those times of separation. Now we have an understanding. We have an understanding around nightmares in general, meaning when they usually show up and around what time of the night they show up and why they show up when they show up, because we are in dream state or REM sleep, and that's where nightmares generally tend to show up for us. We also understand what can be the trigger and understanding what separation means, and that it's not just proximity, but rather it's an emotional state of being separated from something that is dear to us and familiar for us, and that taxes the system, and so that creates a need for coping. And although our child is super skillful and highly functioning and can do it all, and they're wonderful during the day, it seems like everything's fine, the body is giving us information that maybe the child is not able to do when they're awake. So now what do we do at night? Because that's the final question, right? So we understand and we know what we can do during the day. We know how we can help buffer the situation. We meet our child with understanding. But then what is the appropriate response at night? Because our child's waking up and they are sweaty and they are scared and their heart is pounding and they are freaking out. So what do? Do I just stay there with them because that's what feels like maybe needs to happen? Or maybe I should lay with them and fall asleep with them. Or maybe I should bring them into my bed, because when I bring them into my bed, then everything is okay after that. But you always want to think about what is the underlying message that you are relaying to your child. And this is one of my favorite questions, right? We talk about this in different videos. What is that underlying message that I am relaying to my child? So they are waking up in a nightmare, and they are waking up frazzled and afraid, and they are begging, screaming, kicking, crying for us to be able to lay with them, sit with them, stay with them, or bring them into our bed. But for some of us, and I would like to say probably for most of us, we might initially have this knee-jerk reaction where we feel like, okay, I need to stay here. This is what needs to happen right now because we're thrown, right? We talk about this a lot, how our nervous systems are connected. And so our child's nervous system is highly aroused during a nightmare, and we are ripped out of bed in the middle of our sleep, and so we don't really have time to prep ourselves and to show up anchored. And then if we're not careful, boom, we get sucked in, and then we are also frazzled, and we are also in the state of panic. And so what feels right in a state of panic is like, let me just put out the fire because I'm not really thinking right now. I'm in a reactive state. But when we learn, we can have understanding, and that understanding can enable us to show up intentionally in real time. I'd like to talk about attachment parenting for a moment, because this is definitely something that comes up when I speak to families. We want to be connected to our children. We want to be there for them when they're experiencing hardship. And when I'm saying we're going to tuck our children back into bed and then go to the other room, that might feel very off when you're listening to this. Like, wait, I'm like going to leave my child to the wolves and going to expect him to be able to cope? But let's talk about what attachment parenting actually is, because we kind of want to make it into a fairy tale. We think of attachment parenting, and each one of us, as we're hearing that word, we envision and come up with some idea of what it means to be in attachment parenting and to believe in, as if it's like some sort of religion, attachment parenting. Because if it's not attachment parenting, then I don't want to have anything to do with that. But what is attachment parenting? And I'm wondering, like, now I'm asking you that question. Do you have a definition? What is attachment parenting? So let me tell you what attachment parenting is. Attachment parenting is when it's safe to go and it's safe to come back. When for your child, or your child feels it is safe for me to go and it is safe for me to come back. So that might demand a little bit of understanding. What that means is that our children are so secure in the attachment that they can leave without problem and they can come back without worry. So when we think about, let's say, dropping off our child in daycare, it's safe for him to go. That is a child who can say goodbye. And of course, we have times where it's harder to say goodbye and we're like, wait, Mom, don't leave. And our child's by the door and they're crying and they're looking out the window and it breaks our heart. Yes. But generally that's short-lived and it's about a transition. But in general, if a child is healthy emotionally, they can go, meaning it's safe for me to go, and it's safe for me to come back, meaning I want to come back home. That's a safe place for me to be. That is the result of attachment parenting. Attachment parenting does not mean this, because that's what we make out of it, because we are afraid. And so we put it on some nice words like attachment parenting, like I need to be with my child forever and always, otherwise I'm going to damage them. That's what we think, and that's what I hear in my practice. I have many, many, many families that come to me and say, I'm going to damage my child. I'm going to neglect my child if I have to leave them, and if I have to let them, and if I have to be okay with them being alone. But that's actually a sign of health when you can leave and when you can come back, and when the child can be okay with that, and when you can be okay with that. And if you can't be okay with that, your child's not going to be okay with that, right? Because parent in the lead, child follows. And so when I'm talking about a nightmare, and this is an extreme sort of say situation, right? We're not just talking about dropping off our child in daycare. It is healthy and necessary for us to be able to have our child be okay with us leaving and then coming back and then leaving and coming back. So for us parents, let's take the other extreme, who just want to leave. I just want to leave. I just want to close the door, shut the door, let my child deal with his nights all by himself. That is also not skillful, because that means you are usually doing things out of fear. You're afraid to show up because you're scared you're never going to be able to leave again. So again, it's safe for me to go. It's safe for me to come back. That should be your child's voice, not your voice. I mean, your voice as well, but it should definitely be your child's voice. And if that is your child's voice, then you are most likely encouraging what's called attachment parenting. And if your child feels so scared every single time you need to leave, like you can't even go to the bathroom, or you can't leave your child with anyone, or you can't leave the room, or you can't just be normal, right? Because we just want a normal, healthy family dynamic. We want to be able to just be. We want the family to flow. We don't want to feel stuck. Like every step I make, I need to think about it and if it's going to be okay and how it's going to be perceived and whether that was right or not. We just want to be able to be. That's a healthy family dynamic. And so think about how your family dynamic plays out. And think about if it's in your child's mind that they can go and come back and go and come back, and it's safe. No matter where I am, it's safe. It's safe to be there, and then it's safe to come home, and it's safe again, and then it's safe to come back. That means your child has a healthy emotional state. And that generally is fostered by what's called attachment parenting. So I hope that clears up the term, because there is a lot of misunderstanding around attachment parenting, and people throw around the term left and right to give themselves a good excuse for their bad behavior. And so think about that, because keeping your child in need of you 24/7 because you are afraid to leave, or because you don't trust that they're capable, or because you can't handle a little bit of discomfort, is not necessarily attachment parenting. Rather, maybe an invitation for you to take a look inward, where we have growth in parenting to do, because our children raise us as parents, and not just we are raising children. I'm hoping that through this explanation, you have clarity around what it means when our child has a nightmare, what you can do when that situation comes up, and being able to look at the situation, recognize what's going on, where you can put your focus so that you can help empower your child to be able to pass through that stage almost effortlessly. I'm going to leave you with that for this video, but I do want to invite you to my challenge. I have a Quiet Night 4-day challenge. We're going to be together for 4 days. If you join the VIP sessions, you're going to have exclusive access to an extra hour every single day, where we'll be able to listen to what's going on for you, discuss your situation, troubleshoot, and come up with solutions so that you can start reaping the benefits of quiet nights. I appreciate your time, and I will see you in the next video.